Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at our second presentation of the Reigate Priory Junior School proposals. We had over 90 people sign up yesterday, which was fantastic. We've got over 120 people signed up today. I can see that people are still making their way in to the software. So I suggest we wait another minute or two before I introduce the team and we get going with the slideshow. Thank you. Okay, that's a few more people here, which is fantastic. So just a quick hello from myself. My name's Nick Vose. I'm a director of a company called Marengo Communications, and we've been asked by Surrey County Council to help communicate the emerging proposals to you, the residents. I'm going to be chairing today's session and putting your questions to today's presenters at the end of the presentation. We're going to look to speak for no more than 20 minutes, maximum half an hour, and then the rest of the session is over to you guys. Just a quick explanation on housekeeping and how this software works. You can put your questions to the team in the right-hand tab. So to the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a questions tab. Just put them in there. I'd encourage you to start putting them in there throughout the presentation. If you can keep those to single issues, so single themes, that will just help me put them to the team during the Q&A. There's also an upvote function. If there's any particular questions or any particular themes you'd really like us to concentrate on during the Q&A, just use that function, the upvote, and that will help me understand which are the key issues for us to focus in on. At the end of the session, you'll be able to download a copy of this presentation. We're also recording it, so it's made available on the Surrey County Council website after. I'll now just move on to introducing today's presenters, starting with Oliver.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. My name is Oliver Moses, and I am the head teacher at Reigate Priory School.
Thank you, Oliver. Pask, over to you.
Good evening all, I'm Pasqualina Puglisi. I'm the contracts manager responsible for the mainstream schools programme at Surrey County Council.
Fantastic. Zana?
Hi, I'm Zana Putne. I'm a project architect on this project from Novian Architects.
Thank you very much. And we have Ian, our planning consultant.
Hi, my name's Ian Williams. I work for Vale Williams and I'm the planning consultant for this project.
Lovely. We have David, our transport consultant.
Yep, David Holdaway, Director at Velocity Transport Planning, Highways and Transport Consultant.
Smashing. And we have Mark, our landscape consultant.
Good evening, everyone. Mark Johnson from Ubu Design. We are the landscape architects on the project.
Thank you, Mark. And then we have Graham and Richard from ISG. Graham, you to go first, please.
Yes, hello, I'm Graham Wilson. I'm bid manager for ISG. We are the design and build contractors, so we'll manage the team that you see before you.
Fantastic. Richard?
Hello, I'm Richard Rhodes. I'm a design manager with ISG. I'm working with Graham and liaising with our design consultants to make sure that the proposals we come up with are compliant with all the relevant regulations and that we have all the consents and so forth that we need.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Also, just to note that during yesterday's session, we had a few internet technical issues, so people dropped in and out. And that's the presenting team only. So don't worry if that happens. We'll bring them back and we'll just go back to their particular section. Today we're going to hand over shortly to Ollie and to Pask to talk a bit about the background to the project And Ollie's going to talk to us about the school, its principles and its ambitions for the future. Ian's then going to come in and talk a bit more about the site search process, so how we've come to find this site and what other sites we looked at and the process for that. And then we're going to bring in Zana, Mark and David, who are going to talk us through the proposals in more details, and also take you inside the school to show you some of the floor plans that are starting to emerge for the proposals. This is only the first stage of consultation. There is another stage in April, so the information that we have today reflects where we currently are with the project. I'll come back at the end just to explain how you get involved going forward and what the next steps are. And then we're going to have a Q&A, which I hope will last for at least an hour. Pask, over to you.
Thanks very much, Nick. Just as a background to this, I'll keep it very brief because the technical team have plenty to cover alongside Ollie. As many of you locally will know, Surrey County Council purchased the former Cannons site back in 2020 as part of the key driver to bring Surrey back to the heart of the county. That coincided with a review carried out by the Department for Education under what was then their Priority Schools Building Programme, which was used to identify schools in need of repair or replacement. Reigate Priory Junior School was identified as one of those schools, and therefore the site search led us to Reigate Priory, which Ian will, led us to Woodhatch, which Ian will take us through. Essentially, we then appointed ISG as our design and build contractor back in October last year, who have been working really closely with the design team in the school to pull together the proposals that we're going to present to you today. That's involved stakeholder consultations and ensuring that we're designing a compliant scheme, which Zana and the team will take you through. In addition to this, which sits outside of the DfE design guidance, is that this school is going to be the first operationally net zero carbon school, both designed by Surrey and also as a building brought forward by Surrey. So we're really excited about that. It's in line with Surrey's 2050 net zero carbon ambitions, and it sits very similarly with the sustainability ambitions of Reigate Priory, which I will let Ollie take you through next.
Thank you, Bas. Just wait for that slide to figure. There we go. Okay, so yeah, I'm Oliver Moses and the head teacher at Reigate Priory School. For those that don't know me, I'm a local resident with 2 young children. I'm very familiar with the town and its nuances and how it functions and works. And with two young children myself, one in school and one in nursery, I very much in connection with the thoughts and feelings of parents of this school, not to mention my own professional connections to it. Reigate Priory School is a 600 children junior school. By that, it means that there are children aged between 7 and 11 in it, key stage 2, year 3 to year 6. And obviously we serve predominantly central Reigate, but also a bit of South Reigate as well in our catchment area. Predominantly the children arrive to us from Holmesdale Infant School and from Dover's Green School. Dover's Green School from South Reigate. We have a mission statement of bringing learning to life both inside and out. So that is our purpose, our daily goal that we try to achieve and have been striving to achieve that and working with children, both pastoral and educationally, for the benefit of their education and development for a long time, based in the Reigate Priory building in the park. Originally, the school moved there in 1948. It was a post-war decision, and the original head, Mr. Claytor, he originally opened the doors to a very almost derelict type place, and he created the school in a guise of 140 pupils at the time. You can imagine with 140 pupils knocking around in that old building, there was quite a lot of space. But incidentally, in some of his early notes, he does remark that the intention originally was to move the school to South Reigate, and in fact, the direction of travel at that time was for the school to move there in 3 years. And here we are, after recently celebrating our 70th year, and we're into the plus part of that now. It's possible that direction of travel might actually be fulfilled. The school is historically stable and successful, and we're very proud of that history. And up on the screen now for you is our recently updated vision schematic, if you like, which incorporates those S's. Of those, the need to go to a new site kind of impacts all of them, but most particularly the stronger and the sustainable and the smart, the efficiencies too. If we could flip to the next slide, please. In the time, back when I was at school there, and I went to Homesdale when my parents moved to Reigate, and I've watched Homesdale move from a site to a different site in my time in Reigate, and I've watched the Reigate parish move from one side of Reigate to the other. So, and I've watched various other schools evolve in the locality to different sizes and locations. So, the fact that the school is at this crossroads is not unheard of in local school history, or indeed regional or national school history. It does happen. Back when I was at school, there were still rooms in the buildings that were used for storage, such as PE stores and changing rooms, and there was no fence around the school and everything else. And now the building is fit to burst. Those rooms that were once changing rooms or PE stores are now classrooms. What I need to express to you is that the current safeguarding, the educational expectation, all of that, that we have ambitions and future aspirations for what we want to do with children, is now unfortunately being shackled somewhat by the location that we are in. It is a very sad position to be in, because that building has been our home and has helped us evolve to the culture that we have. But we are extremely confident that we can move our culture, our ethos, the wonderful children that we serve, and the teachers and staff that support them to a new location and carry our ethos with them, and in fact even enhance it even further. Although we currently exist in the building and we have a huge number of management techniques and routines to accommodate the function within the school, the operation of it is extremely difficult on a day-to-day basis, and we would rather be in a position where we can be in a home where we can work more efficiently, more effectively, and designate even more time to the children that we want to support and grow for the future. That, in addition to that, we have to remember that a Grade 1 listed building, by virtue of its listing, monument building, is very difficult to manage and care for, and the physical integrity of that building in 10, 15, 20 years' time is going to be increasingly more challenging. So it is an appropriate and sensible juncture for this school to consider a move to a new location, to release itself from those shackles and go to an even more exciting place. And just on that exciting place, having visited the sites that we're going to, the grounds that we're looking at are very exciting, and we very much see it as having our own mini Priory Park within the grounds, secure grounds, and the opportunity for children to evolve and grow within a carbon neutral environment and learn from that. We are very passionate about. And just remember that Reigate Priory will just be down the road, and we will still maintain that connection to the building and the park as much as we possibly can, but also embracing our new home, which it actually has a significant amount of history attached to it. So we're very excited about the prospect of this, and I feel very fortunate we've got a very good and dedicated team that have been supporting us through this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ollie. That's fantastic. We're now going to bring in Ian, who's going to talk us through the site search approach. And Ben, I hope this answers your question that's just come in, and Russ as well, about site search. Ian, over to you.
Great, thanks, Nick. So the search for sites was carried out by colleagues of mine at Vale Williams, who are agents, and they search professionally for sites for clients. The search was carried out by way of sending out a requirement circular, market search of properties which are currently listed, as well as a search on software and applications which showed land ownership and demises of various ownerships. In total, 24 sites were identified as being potentially sites which could accommodate the school. These were discounted on the elements that you can see on the screen. So the first one was availability and whether or not the site was available in a reasonable time frame. We looked at it and saw whether or not it's on the market, whether this site is occupied and requiring vacant possession, or in some instances, the number of owners and whether or not the site required land assembly of a number of legal titles. In addition to that, the location of the site was important and would have to be within 2 miles of the existing school site. The third one was the size of the site. So in order to accommodate the school, a minimum of 5 acres was required. Another consideration was the access, whether or not the roads serving the site were adequate for a school. So in some instances, some of the sites that were identified had only single lane access, which wouldn't be adequate. On top of that, you looked at any planning designations such as greenbelt or ancient woodland, which would preclude development or require sort of very special circumstances in the case of greenbelt, or whether or not the site was actually allocated for other uses. And the type of existing use that is on the site could lead to some issues such as land contamination. And this sort of fed into it as well in terms of costs. So sites such as industrial sites, one of which was identified, would probably have land contamination. This would increase the cost for development. So essentially, we were looking at whether or not the site was available, whether it was achievable to provide a school, and whether it's deliverable in a reasonable timeframe. And we're currently in discussions with the Surrey County Council planners and other stakeholders in this process. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you very much, Ian. We're now going to bring in Zana from our design team just to talk through the site and its context and the emerging layout that we are proposing for the new school.
Thanks, Nick. So as you can see, this is the proposed site, and this area indicated in blue is the overall area that is owned by Surrey County Council, and the area indicated in red is one that is currently being looked at for the school building and the associated play areas as well. So when we're looking at the site access, it would be shared with the Surrey County Council offices at Woodhedge Place, and then it would filter down onto the site itself. And we're also looking at some pedestrian access as well, as we will move on to in later slides. As you probably know, being residents in the area, the area is predominantly surrounded by 2-story housing on west, south and east. And there is also a locally listed building, which is quite centrally in that image indicated in yellow. And just south of that is also ponds. The site topography is quite steep. There is quite a slope across the site, so that was one of the challenges we had to work with. And so there's a public sewer right across the site, spanning from east to west, so limiting where we can actually build. So those were some of the considerations that came from the surveys that we undertook, and we are continuing to undertake as part of the design proposals. So if we move on to the next slide, slightly more on what we're actually looking at in terms of the site layout, we considered several locations within the site for the building itself and how the pitches could be laid out, as well as the access. So the east of the site was explored. However, due to the difficult supervision of those areas, which would have meant that the children have to travel quite far from the vehicular access point, as well as the lack of supervision to those areas, that was discounted. It was also really, really close to the residential properties to the east, and there would have been, that area is one of the steepest on the site altogether. The area, so we settled on the area on the west, which is where the white indicates the proposed building that we're currently designing, and that provided good safeguarding as well as good access and supervision to the vehicular access points, which is in the grey. You can see the access road with some parking associated with it as well. So that gave really good connections for inside-outside spaces as well, which is very much the school ethos. So the access to the site, as I said, would be shared with the county offices, but we were also looking at a potential pedestrian and cyclist route from Hornbeam Road. So that's to the right-hand side of the image. And there would be an in and out route as part of kind of traveling down that slopey site to access the site. But I'm now going to hand you over to Graham to take us through some sustainability targets for the project.
Thanks, Anna. Just push on to the next slide, please. Thank you. As Pascal alluded to earlier, this will be the first net zero carbon in operation school within Surrey. It's a pilot, the prototype for future schools going ahead and to target the net zero carbon by 2050 agenda that the council is now signed up to. What that means is that over the course of its life in operation, the building will be net zero carbon. It will generate energy, it will generate emissions that include carbon, but that will be offset by energy generated on site by renewables that will be carbon free. It'll come through renewable energy such as ground source heat pumps and photovoltaic panels. The way that we approach this is to actually design and build a very efficient building fabric. It's a starting point, so highly insulated, very airtight to high performing standards. And that means that the energy consumption over the course of the use of the building could therefore be minimised. And having established what that minimum energy consumption will be over the course of the year, we then bring in these renewables to generate the equivalent amount of power over the course of the year so that nets out. That will mean in real terms that during the winter, when there's perhaps higher heat loads required, that we'll be importing energy from zero carbon sources onto the site from the grid. And equally in the summer, when the school's less used and we have more power generated from PVs, that energy, that carbon-free energy will be exported back into the grid. So that's what the whole ethos is in terms of making that net zero carbon over its lifespan of the entire 60 years. It doesn't include an embodied carbon analysis in this case for the construction of the building itself, but the building will be designed to current BREEAM standards, which will ensure that we are accessing sustainable and environmentally friendly products as a matter of course. It's just that doesn't form part of the measure for the net zero carbon in use. Okay.
Thank you, Graham. We're now going to bring in Mark, who's going to talk a bit more about the landscaping and outdoor spaces. Mark.
Thanks, Nick. Good evening. I'm just going to run you through the general layout of the external spaces. So to the northeast, we have an existing wooded bund, which will be utilised by the school as a external teaching and learning space, as a kind of habitat, natural area. Then to the south of that, there are 2 football pitches marked. This is essentially an external play area, which can be utilised for football, but is also utilised as a playground. This will be constructed from primarily an all-weather grass surface, and it gives quite a large play space. Then as we come closer to the building, as we wrap around the building from the east to the south, coming to the west, there is a macadam surface, which is essentially that combination that Zana has alluded to of in-out space, and it's very much the breakout space from the classrooms directly into the external space. The entrance to the building is about halfway along the western elevation, and in this area we have parking for disabled, cycle parking for 80 spaces, and we have minibus parking. We also have an access adjacent to that entrance into the southwest corner, which again is external learning space that can be utilised by the school. To the north of the building, we have a netball court, which is open and it can be utilised again where drop-off takes place, which will be within that area to the northwest corner of the building. To the north of that, we have a Muga multi-use games area, which is wrapped with a 3-metre high fence and again is for more formal sports. The whole safeguarding, which was one of the questions that was asked within the question bar, we have a 2.4 metre high fence that wraps around the entire site that will provide security, site security for students, and obviously prevent anyone accessing the school that shouldn't be doing so. As far as the parking, which Zana again has alluded to, there will be an access coming in from Cockshott Hill. It'll be a one-way system that you'll come back out onto Cockshott Hill. There is parking within that area and drop off, and David will allude to that in more detail. And that's an overview of the general layout at present for the proposed school. I'll hand you back to Nick.
Thank you, Mark. We're now going to bring in David to talk us through the transport work that he's been doing to date and the surveys and information that we're currently collecting. David, over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm David Holloway from Velocity Transport Planning. So we've been engaged early on in the project to deal with transport and highways matters. We've got significant experience of school development across the southeast, 60 plus schools within Surrey, and many which are also located close to this site. So very familiar with the area, don't live too far from here. Have been involved in early discussions with Surrey County Council, highways and road safety teams, who will be the key kind of stakeholders in the not only the design development process, but that will ultimately scrutinise on behalf of Surrey the proposals from the perspective of safety, parking, congestion and access, but with the ultimate aim of trying to make this site as safe as possible as part of the relocation. So the stage we're at is that we don't have all the solutions from a transport perspective, because we're in design development, and key to that is understanding how the current school operates, from existing mode share data to postcode information for the existing school, but also managing the interface with the feeder schools, because we obviously have the benefit of understanding what the future catchment looks like, not just what the current catchment looks like. So we've been gathering that data, looking at the relationships between start and finish times, which will be a key consideration in terms of timing, our ability to influence things like staggering, so that we don't have everybody arrive at the same time, minimize pressure on the local highway, and also one of the key aspects of the work we're looking at is traffic data, which we are awaiting collection of results from various traffic surveys that took place on the local highway, which is on the next slide. But ultimately, we're looking at the impact, the design of the site from access and egress, safe cycle access and pedestrian access, to minimise the impact on the local highway from the perspective of parking and congestion at main signalised junctions and roundabouts as you come through Reigate. As part of the planning application, there'll be a transport assessment submitted along with a travel plan, delivery and servicing plan, and car park management plan, all of which with the intention of trying to encourage non-car modes of travel as far as possible. And of course, there will be people who are in the existing catchment that benefit conveniently from the school being located close to them at the moment, and with a longer commute, there'll be decisions to be made whether that results in continuing to walk or cycle or get in the car. But there's also a significant benefit to be had from those that live in the location of where the school's going. So we've got to balance all of those things out and present a case that's acceptable for as many people as possible, and ultimately is safe and minimises the impact to local residents that don't have Reigate Priory Junior School located too close to them at the moment. If you just jump onto the next slide, whoever's in control. Yep. So this is just a diagram indicating the traffic surveys that took place at the start of February, in advance of half term. The purple lines are showing the parking beat survey that took place on the assumption that parking, I'm sure we'll get onto this in the Q&A, on the assumption that parking generally takes place on street, as occurs at the majority of schools in Surrey for drop-off and pick-up. We were required to demonstrate the impact on those local residential streets for the obvious places that children or parents would park with the children. The red markers there are just showing you the speed surveys, because there's a requirement to consider the design of or amendments to the access and the new egress from Cockshot Hill. And the black markers there are indicating the junctions that we were required to assess. Now, we haven't included the signalised junction with just the southeast, because that's subject to proposed improvement works by Surrey County Council internally. So we're just trying to establish what the status of that is, where we understand that there are capacity and pedestrian and cycle safety improvements being designed and implemented by the authority themselves, not part of this project, but we'll take that into consideration as part of our overall assessment. So yeah, no doubt, and can see from various questions that transport's a hot topic, and no doubt we'll end up fielding lots of your questions as we get onto the Q&A.
Smashing, thank you, David. We're just going to bring Zana back in now, just to take us inside the school and talk us through the floor plans. Zana, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So these are the emerging plans that we have spent some time developing in close consultation with the school as well as Surrey County Council. So in the lack of labels, we're going to take you through spaces by colour coding. So the green spaces that you can see on your left-hand side are the large spaces, which consist of small hall, main hall and dining. And one of the schools the school was very keen to include was a large space for whole school assembly, large gathering space. So we have included the sliding folding partition between dining and main hall. And that is a potential area that could also be used for community use. The entrance that you can see more centrally in the plans is shown. And with that tiny little red triangle is our main entrance into the building, and the blue spaces surrounding it are the staff offices. And as you enter the school, you will have a lovely view to the surrounding landscape area, as well as a snippet into the school life, as well as the library is the area in yellow. And the classrooms are clustered together. So where Ollie spoke about school very much having that ethos of having inside-outside teaching and learning, we have made sure that there's good connections to those classrooms. And each classroom also has a cluster. And within that cluster, we have breakout spaces, which are the small yellow areas supporting the teaching as well. So the staff space, this is the first floor plan. Staff spaces are at the heart of the school, which does give good passive supervision, not only inside of the building, but also externally to the play spaces. The toilets, as you can see in grey, are giving good connection as the pupils filter down onto their play areas. And as I mentioned before, again, there's further learning support spaces as well, consisting of small group rooms and music rooms on the first floor as well. As we move on to the second floor plan, the school has a nice progression throughout. So on ground floor, we have accommodated year 3. On first floor, we have accommodated years 4 and 5. On the sixth form, we have year 6. So as you kind of go through the school years, there's a nice progression going towards the top of the building. And on your right-hand side is our arts cluster, which consists the space in green is the studio, and just adjacent to it is our arts classroom. And the yellow spaces just to the top of it are our music group rooms, so are quite nicely linked to the studio as well. Within the school, we also have SEN spaces, so those are centrally located yellow spaces, and we have one on the ground floor as well as one on the second floor. And in between them, central to the plan, is also a lift to make sure that should anybody have mobility issues, they can make sure to access all the spaces as well. And as you can see, the orientation of this building would be effectively the north is on your left-hand side. So the Belvedere's would be just to the top of this image, and we have made sure to recess the building ever so slightly to help with that apparent building mass as well on that. And as mentioned before, the sustainability of the school is important, and as such we have used it as a learning tool as well. So roofs will be covered in photovoltaic panels, so through those small spaces as well as some of the classrooms you will have a view through to it. So that is an opportunity to use it as a learning tool as well. The community access, I believe we touched upon already, and there will be various spaces inside and outside of the school building. And I believe Mark already noted there is possibility for Mugger as well to be accessed outside of school hours for community.
Excellent, thank you, Zana. We had a few issues with your microphone, possibly your headphones, but I think we picked up most of that. But if anyone has any questions, just put them in the Q&A and we'll come back. Pas, can I just bring you in to talk about the admissions criteria going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Again, I'll keep this very brief. Conscious that most of the people on the call who are parents of either children at the feeder school or Reigate Priory will have received written letters and flyers in advance of the half term. But in summary, as Ollie already said, this is an existing school that is being relocated. So that's the current 5 form entry, 600 pupils simply being relocated. There's no intention to create additional pupil places at all. There was a consultation run publicly and a recommendation that went to Cabinet for approval to maintain the current nodal point as it stands for catchment areas at the front of the existing Priory Park building. And therefore there's no intention to change that admission criteria. So again, that remains unaffected, and any changes to that would require a similar public consultation and Cabinet approval to do so. I believe the full details are covered in the letter, but if there are any questions, happy to pass them on to education colleagues or pick them up with Ollie and myself today.
Fantastic, thanks, Pas. So at the start, I said I'd come back to just remind you how you can continue to be involved in this process going forward. There are various ways to do that. There is the website, which I hope many of you have been on already, and there's the link there. You can fill in a feedback form on that website. So I'd encourage you, please, to do that. We are asking if people can get their feedback for this first stage to us by Monday, the 28th of February. That's just so I can package up all of the feedback you've provided us and send it through to the design team to reflect on and look at how we can respond to the issues raised ahead of coming back to you again in late April. There's also an email address here for my colleague, Debbie. Any questions, any queries, please do email her, or do in fact give her a telephone call if that is easier. We're now going to move into the Q&A. We've got just under an hour left in the session, so plenty of time to work through your questions, of which there's been a significant number, so thank you very much. I'm going to start, David, on transport. There's been a lot of questions around transport, so we'll try to work our way through as many of these as possible before we move on to a few different areas that have been raised. There's a question come in from Mrs. or Mr. Bibby. What is the parking provision? I live opposite the site and I'm very concerned. Currently people park at Morrison's, Bell Street and Sandhills Road. Where are they expected to park now, given there are no car parks? I don't want them parking all over my road.
Yep, it's a good point. So the starting position from a policy perspective is for there to be no provision for drop-off and collection parking for pupils. So no provision for short stay parking is the starting position for all schools. That's general policy within Surrey County Council, with the exception of long stay parking. So we've got enough. There'll be sufficient parking to manage the long stay parking, all day parking from visitors and staff within the car park. But at present, there isn't provision for drop off and collection. But we're trying to build the evidence base to put to Surrey County Council to accept an element of drop off and collection within the school grounds, mindful of the feedback we've had. The presence of Cockshot Hill and the likely increase in vehicular traffic associated with relocation of the school. So the long stay parking will be accommodated, but short stay parking, in the worst case situation that drop off and collection isn't accepted, once we enter into formal dialogue on our proposals and present various aspects of the data collection, the strategy will be parking on street as occurs at the majority of schools across Surrey. As part of the the mitigation package from the perspective of travel planning and car park management plans, where we've encountered a similar situation and obvious concerns over on-street parking. We've implemented a car park management plan, making it clear to the new intake each year within the school where is and isn't acceptable to park on street. But ultimately, as you know, where there are a lack of parking controls and unrestricted parking, then drop off will be able to take place on those streets. But through some of the design work that we implement, there are going to be some obvious locations and junctions and visibility displays that we need to protect and put together a package of on street highway mitigation, such as double yellow lining, school keep clear lines, to ensure people don't park inappropriately.
Thanks, David. Again, sticking with transport, we've had a question, and David, for you, but Pask, you may wish to come in as well, from Adam. What are your thoughts on establishing a bus or minibus service to bring children from Reigate Station to the site? It would be a safe and central point to pick up children and take them safely there.
I'll come in on that one first. Thanks, Nick. That's something that has been discussed and we've reviewed. It's certainly something that we would have to engage with Highways team on in transport development planning. As with any provision like that, there is a requirement for funding, and therefore there would need to be sufficient support and funding for that. And that's something, again, that would need consideration.
Fantastic. Thank you, Pask. David, a question here from Russell. What assessment has been made of the impact on traffic and congestion on the whole town, which is already an issue when many parents will need to drive to the school?
If the question's about capacity generally within the town, and it's a difficult one because for when we're representing development of all sorts and land uses, there's a requirement to assess the impacts on the local highway, obviously in immediate proximity to the site you're looking at, but wider afield, and you enter into an engagement process with the local highway authority to establish the key junctions that are at risk of increase in traffic conditions, those that are potentially more sensitive further away. And also there's the opportunity to consider reductions in existing traffic across the network where, for instance, we're relocating a school. We've gone through that engagement process with Surrey County Council Highways, and I forget which slide it is, 16 or 15 in the slide deck there. We were required to assess the impact on 6 local junctions that were shown on the screen. We haven't included an assessment of the impact in the town centre because it's difficult to study how far afield do you go. How far do you look? And there's only so much time and capacity and budget, valuable budget that needs to be spent on the school to look at the entirety of Reigate. But that's what the local highway authority are there for, to act on the counties and the borough's behalf to ensure we're duly considering the impact on the network.
Fantastic, thank you, David. Again, sticking on a similar theme, and it's about Cockshot Hill here. Cockshot Hill is extremely busy. What are the provisions for additional cars and foot traffic on an already busy footpath?
Yeah, Cockshot Hill, we did a site walk with the head of road safety and Surrey Highways at the outset of this scheme, because clearly those that live north of Reigate that might choose would ideally choose to use Cockshot Hill to commute to school, as many do in the opposite direction at present. Concerns from ourselves were raised in relation to the existing width of the footways running on both sides, and certainly there's over the years it looks like there's been a lack of vegetation management and siding out of the vegetation, which is affecting the width of the footway. So we've escalated that internally within Surrey to establish whether the highways maintenance team can get on top of the maintenance and effectively side out the vegetation that's overgrown along the length of the footway. The cycleway aspect was also raised with the major projects team, because I know from other projects that I've dealt with locally that there's been talk of introducing a cycleway right away from Woodhatch Road to the centre of town. That's never come to fruition, but as I understand it, that isn't an option on the table, purely because of the principal route nature of that road, the volume of traffic that it carries, and the nature of the traffic it carries, that there just isn't the room to eat into the existing road space to be able to provide a dedicated footway cycleway. As for general traffic conditions, well, I know there will obviously be people vocal about the fact that trips will be made by car south, but we're not just dealing with a catchment that's immediately north of the school. There are people coming from north, east, south, and west, and a significant volume of people that already live to the east of the school, not just the north of the school. So I'd argue that quite a lot of that traffic is already to some extent using Cockshot Hill, whether it's through the current journeys in the opposite direction to school, or onward trips by parents to work. But that's why we have to go through a traffic assessment process and model the impacts on the key junctions in proximity to the site on Cockshot Hill. But we're working with liaising with Surrey County Council to establish what improvements, if any, can be made, including the vegetation clearance to widen the existing footways.
Thank you, David. We again sticking on transport. There's been a couple of questions. I'll put them separately that have received quite a few upvotes so far. The first one here from Sam. Sam says, or Sam asks, surely the traffic surveys should be done from now, when many more people are travelling to their workplaces rather than working from home. There's been an increase in the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Yep, that is an industry-wide issue of what's acceptable neutral conditions. Now, pre-pandemic, you'd survey during neutral conditions in the year outside of Christmas, Easter holidays, outside of school terms, when it's neutral conditions. But we don't have the foresight of when what the new normal is, and that can't hold all future development up on the basis that will 6 months time, will 9 months time, will 2 years time give us a better picture. But what we do have is the benefit of historic traffic data from education and residential development within the last 3 to 4 year period, which we're running scenario tests against. So there's been lots of traffic counts at the Woodhatch Prices Lane junction, which tells us all the movements to from that junction, therefore using Cockshot Hill. There's some previous assessment work that was done in relation to the Cannon building, which tells us about traffic levels up and down there. So we've got historic traffic data that we can rely on in order to create a genuine baseline. But as for what future travel looks like, yes, there's no doubt going to be an increase in traffic from where we're at today. But that's a situation that's going to affect all development nationwide, and our ability to accurately assess and predict the future transport impacts.
Thanks, David. And another question from Bethan that's received quite a few upvotes. The transport section has failed to address the large number of transport-related questions included. How are these going to be addressed as part of this consultation process at this early stage? They cannot be brushed over.
Yeah, absolutely right, and I'd expect no less. I think the key point to make here is this isn't the transport solution. This is early on in the engagement. There will be more public consultations to come, and the application submission is not imminent. And from other public consultations, one of the key concerns is that residents, parents, stakeholders' voices aren't heard in the process. Well, we're early in the process. We're in design development. We're still collecting data. And we're going through this process in order to gain feedback. So I think the question was about not responding to the concerns in the slide deck here. Well, we're here to listen to feedback and get people's views. That's a key part of the consultation process that will then inform the design development. And even you can see various questions about or concerns raised about the ability to get from one school to another for those that have got children in the feeder schools and they get to Reigate Priory Junior School. That's a great example of some of the challenges that we need to address. But it's more evident that those are issues once we go through a consultation process like this.
Thank you, David. And that also addresses a number of the questions have related to the future plans for people to be able to drop off at Holmesdale and also drop off at Reigate Priory in the future. We'll probably come back to transport, but I'm just going to move us on to a different topic because I know there have been other issues raised, and I think it's make sure we've got plenty of time to talk about those as well. I'm going to move into sort of the new school, the admissions, the facilities, those kinds of areas. Pask, we've sort of dealt with this already, but can you just confirm and reassure Mario that the catchment, his question, which says, will the catchment area change considerably?
So no, the catchment area remains as it currently is based on the doorstep of the existing Priory Park building. Fantastic,
thank you. And then Zana, one for you on the design of the school, and this is something to consider for the second stage of consultation. Can you show images of how the 3-storey school building will overlook the west and north sides of the Belvedere's residential flats?
Yes, absolutely. So we have set the building back ever so slightly. In the next, as the plans are developing, in the next round of consultation, we will be showing some sections as well as visualizations to better really show that impact and how it's been mitigated.
Thank you, Zana. And staying with you, we also had a question about how we would get light into the corridors of the new school. Can you sort of talk us through that?
Yes, so there is plenty of borrowed light from the classroom spaces itself. So we have quite generous windows, and as you come into the classroom itself, there is also visual panels just adjacent to them. And as the plan is having those breakout spaces immediately of classroom bases as well, it won't appear as a long, narrow corridor because of those spaces as well. It kind of changes the perception as you move through the space.
Fantastic, Zana. Thank you very much. Mark, one for you. What safeguarding measures will we put in place given the school will be on a shared site?
So, as I alluded to earlier, the school site, the boundary of the school site will be wrapped in a 2.4 metre high fence. So as far as safeguarding, there will be no access obviously through that fence apart from gated access or directly through the school site, and that gated access will be managed by the school. There will also be controlled access into the site, which will be managed by the school from a gate to the north coming off that access into Woodhatch, and a gate to the south coming back onto Cockshot Hill from the road that feeds into the site. So that covers the safeguarding. Again, it's a DFE requirement and they stipulate the size, the height of the fencing, and that has to meet their criteria.
Thank you, Mark. Pask, just coming back to you again on the catchment area. Lisa's asked for a further clarification. For how long will the catchment area be based on the current school?
Thanks, Nick. There's no intention to change that at the moment. There's not been a time frame set on it.
Fantastic, thank you. And we've had a few questions come in about air quality. I'm not sure, Ian, if you're best placed to explain that process for the planning system, but can we just explain what we'll be doing in terms of understanding air quality and the current situation and I guess future mitigation going forward?
Yeah, so as part of the planning application process, we'll be required to submit an air quality assessment. This will, like I say, form part of the package that will be put in the planning application. That would include sort of assessment of any sort of pollutants that would come from road traffic, as well as any other uses in the area. Obviously, if there are air levels of pollutants higher than expected, then obviously there'll be mitigation put in for that. But generally, if it's not within an air quality management area, that shouldn't really be an issue.
Fantastic, thanks, Ian. Pask, one for you here from Charlotte. Is the head teacher at Homesdale going to have an opportunity to feed into this?
I've actually met with the head teacher of Homesdale and walked around site. So she's been very supportive of the proposals. Naturally, she's raised the same concerns as others around transport, and that's something that we're looking to close out, as David's already mentioned, as part of the detailed design process.
Fantastic, thank you, Pask. We are, I think, going to move again to a different theme, and I think we'll look at site search. Ian, we've had a few questions come in on this one. Starting actually, I think, first of all, with a question from Sam. Has Reigate and Banstead Borough Council accepted the change of use of the land in principle or not?
So the application will be made on behalf of Surrey County Council. So the application itself will be submitted to the Surrey County Council Regulation 3 planning team. We've currently had a pre-application meeting with them where they sort of highlighted concerns in terms of the principle of the site, it being urban open space. However, that's why we've gone through the process of the site selection to demonstrate that this is the only available site, as well as providing educational needs statement as well in terms of the need to relocate the school and sort of any adverse impacts that would occur if that wasn't the case, and that will sort of form part of the planning balance of the consideration for the Surrey County Council Reg 3 planners.
Thanks, Ian. We've had a few questions come in about Ray Park. Can you just talk us through that being part of the site search selection and the process for that?
So Ray Park was considered within this site selection. It's been discounted because it's currently operational for Surrey Fire and Rescue, and also Surrey County Council, through their obligations under the Civil Contingency Act, use it as a area for emergency contingency planning, and that would sort of require quite a lot of work to sort of carry on. So at the moment, it's not a readily available site for the school site.
Thanks, Ian. And we've also had a lot of questions from people asking when can they see the site search document. Can you just let them know, please?
Yeah, so that will form part of the planning application package. So the site analysis will be there within the full suite of documents that will be submitted with the planning application. And obviously there'll be the ability to sort of have a look through that and sort of put any representations that you want to the Surrey County Council planners.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, I think we will move again to a slightly different topic and area. And Pascal, I'll put these to you in the first instance, but we may need to come back to two people on this because it's regarding educational provision. We've had a question here from Paul. Have you thought about the bigger picture and the possibility of making Homesdale a primary 4 to 11 and Reigate Priory 4 to 11, as this would help the drop-off and pick-up rate through Reigate, especially as the parish, Sandcross, St John's and Ray Common are all primary schools?
Thanks, Nick. I believe that has historically, that is a matter for education colleagues, and when the instruction came through to look for this site, those decisions had already been made. So yes, I can't answer the detail behind them, but we can happily take that away and respond. I don't know, Ollie, if you want to add to that.
Thank you, Pas. I think, although I think that it's important for people to understand that this is a journey that's been going on for a significant number of years, and the challenges that the school face, because there was another question around the renovations and staying within the home that we are in. I haven't got, there isn't the time to go through all of that right now, but just most recently within the pandemic, I've been offering information to the parent and carer body about some of the challenges that the functionality of our building offers, and that impacts on what we would want to do an example, most rooms currently have a roof that was blown off at the weekend, and whereas maybe a normal school would be able to just quickly get that patched up and sorted because we're a grade 1 listed monument, there is a much longer path in order for us to try and respond to that. Equally, you have to take into account the fact that we are sitting in a park, and DfE do have expectations, quite rightly, about how schools are organised, laid out, based on extensive amount of research and knowledge, and it is basically the point that we have to move. Now, obviously, moving to a new home is going to be very difficult, particularly in the town and the setting that we are in. However, that is the challenge that currently faces us. But the DfE, Lord Agnew came and visited us quite a while ago now, and the DfE have been very clear that it will be a junior school of 600 that will be recreated, and that's the direction that the DfE have given Surrey in order to try and recreate that. And with that, thank you.
Thanks, Ollie. We've had a question, Zana, I think for you in the first instance, which has come from somebody asking whether there'd be a swimming pool in the development, in the scheme.
There is currently no plans for a swimming pool to be included in the project. No.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that, Zana. One, I think for Pascal, perhaps for Graham and Richard, can we just confirm when the school is due to move?
Graham, do you want to take that?
Sorry, I was on mute. I think that's shown on your last slide there.
There we go.
Nick. We're targeting spring 24.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay. We've had a question here that I can help with from Jennifer, who asked, can we just clarify how you're going to capture and respond to all of the questions? Perhaps you can post a link to where we can see your responses after this event. Jennifer, I think the first thing to say is the recordings from both of these sessions and all of the conversations and all of the questions will be available on the County Council website. So we'll be uploading those so you can watch them again at your leisure. We'll also be reviewing all of the feedback that's come through via telephone, via email, and from the Surrey Says platform where the feedback form is hosted. And we'll be passing that on to the team. I think what we'll do is look to publish a series of FAQs so that we can provide a formal response on the issues raised during the first stage of consultation. And then ultimately, the reason we split this is so that we can take this immediate feedback from you on the proposals as they currently are and come back in April with a second stage of consultation with more developed proposals. And during that, again, we'll help to explain how we've responded to some of the queries and concerns that have been raised today on this session, on yesterday's session, and through the feedback that we received through the various other mechanisms that I just talked you through. Okay, and Carla, that's a very good question. Why an FAQ and not a full consultation report? There will be a full consultation report. We'll only produce and submit that when we've completed the consultation in April. So that will be available and that will be submitted with the planning application. And again, that will include all of the issues and questions raised and the response from the team. Again, another one I can probably answer from Melissa that's just come through. When will the external designs be available for comments? It's a really good question. We'll be including all of that information once it's developed and tested in the second stage of consultation, which we're hoping to hold shortly after half term in April, so the sort of the final week of April. Okay. Pascal, I'll put this one to you in the first instance, and it's been updated several times, and I believe someone else has referenced it as well. It's from Elliot. It feels like you are targeting families who can't afford private schools unfairly with this decision. Does Surrey County Council ultimately want lower income families out of North Reigate? Is that the plan?
I honestly am not really sure where that question has come from. And that could be because it's a local comment. Absolutely not. All we are simply providing here is relocation of the current facility as required, because the future of the current building is unsustainable. And so hopefully we are, in doing so, we're creating a long-term sustainable solution for Oliver and his team to ensure the future provision of, top quality education for the Reigate community that it currently serves.
Thanks, Pask. Another question which kind of takes us back to transport, but it takes us back to Graham's important clarification about operationally net zero, and that being the building and not any other aspect. We've had a question that says, with so many people driving to school and this creating a significant amount of additional traffic, how does that fit into our consideration and the council's net zero carbon ambitions?
Sorry, Nick, I'm not sure if you're addressing that question at me, but
thanks, Graham. Yeah.
In terms of delivery of the new school, I think it's a difficult thing to address all of the environmental considerations globally or even locally in the delivery of a new building. What we're attempting to do here is to deliver on the basis that a new school is being built, deliver a new school that provides that net zero carbon target, delivers against that target as part of an ongoing and evolving agenda and target to achieve. I think that somebody else had previously said that the whole purpose is, the whole objective of it isn't kind of negated, but it just comes back to the point that because of the traffic and transport, but I think that the whole point comes back to they can only address those issues that are in front of us as the deliverers of the school in the new location.
Thanks, Graham. I'll just keep you on actually as well before I move on to sort of a miscellaneous theme, if you like, because there's a lot of other questions as well. But Rupert's just asked, when will the build need to begin to hit the spring 2024 completion target?
We have a construction target award of November 2022 on that slide.
Fantastic. Thanks, Graham. Rupert, I hope that helps. We've had a question, David, moving back to transport, about whether or not the existing car park, I'm assuming this refers therefore to the car park related to Woodhatch Place, will be available for parents to pick up and drop off.
Yeah, at the moment there's we're talking about the Bell Street car park, presumably. There's a number of spaces that are available to pupils based on where they currently are. If there's the ability to continue doing that and offer and provide a kind of walking bus solution, then that's something we'd definitely be prepared to consider. But it really depends on the logistics and funding available to be able to offer up those places that would otherwise be used by general members of the public.
Thank you, David. And Pask, one for you. What's the plan for the Priory site once it's vacated?
Thanks, Nick. Surrey Estates colleagues are currently in consultation with Reigate and Banstead Estates colleagues to look at the future use. Reigate and Banstead are currently looking into potential options for that.
Fantastic, thank you. And again, not quite sure where to put this one, but we've had a question from Russell, which has been upvoted a fair few times. As previously asked, what happens to the project and timeline if the transport complications cannot be resolved safely or satisfactorily?
I can probably come in on that one briefly, Nick.
Thank you.
So as part of this process to get to this point, we engage in pre-application advice, and that has picked up on those particular items. Obviously, as part of that, we then go through the detailed design process, which is what we're doing at the moment, and David's explained. So in principle, the location of the site is agreed, and the use of it as a school, etc. So David and the team will simply work to provide the solution that best suits the site in terms of mitigating any additional impacts created by it.
Thanks, Pask. And David, just coming back to you, a clarification from Anne, and I know Anne lives very locally. She actually meant the Woodhatch Place car park.
Yeah, apologies. I saw that, and I was hoping you were going to ask the question. Yeah, so that was one of the questions I had at the outset of the project, was whether there was the ability to use the Woodhatch Place car park, given the substantial size of it. Unfortunately, we're required to ensure this site is future proofed, and if we proposed Woodhatch Place parking as our part of our parking solution, and it transpired that couldn't be made available for the foreseeable future, then we'd have a problem. So we've got to make the assumption that it isn't able to be used, even if there is a chance that it potentially could be used for drop off and pick up for a short period of time. And that's principally down to the fact that it's outside the red line boundary. It isn't guaranteed, and it might, from my own experience, it could be a case that Surrey don't occupy that site for the foreseeable. It could be multi-let, or there could be all sorts of challenges. And the first question that we asked is, how soon can the overspill parking within the school grounds be removed if we were to occupy the site? So that's another point that's been made by Surrey Highways that have reviewed the application. It's just not it's not something that we could guarantee in the future, or that could be guaranteed to us in the future, it being outside the red line boundary for the school.
Thank you, David. We've had a couple of questions in from Sam, one of which I'll answer first. So Sam asks, how many attendees are there today? It doesn't seem to show. At its height, Sam, there were 89 attendees, so that excludes the people you see on the screen, so 89. Also, another question from Sam and Ian, I think this one is for you. Doesn't Reigate and Bannister Borough Council recognise the proposed site as an historic park and garden, i.e. the entire gardens of Woodhatch Place? What's the view of the Conservation Officer?
So yes, the Woodhatch Place and also the Woodhatch Lodge, they're both locally listed heritage assets. So the Woodhatch Place, as the wider site, is a historic park and garden. That in itself doesn't necessarily preclude sort of any development of the site, but again, as part of the planning application, we would be submitting a heritage statement which would look at the significance of the park, but also look at the proposals that have been put forward, and sort of have a look, and it would make an assessment in terms of the heritage asset. And obviously there's a balancing act in planning in terms of sort of taking the pros and cons of any development. So again, that would be submitted to Surrey council planners, and they would take a view on that.
Thank you, Ian. Pask, there's a question that I've been meaning to put, and Jennifer's kindly reminded me, and it's something that's come up over the last 15 or so minutes on site search. And can you just clarify what we are here consulting on today, just to make sure that people are aware that it's whether we're consulting on the site location or are we consulting on the building and on the school? So in effect, is it a done deal, you like, that the school will go in this location?
We're effectively consulting today on relocating Reigate Priory to Woodhatch Place. We're not consulting on the site location. That's the purpose of the site allocations or the alternative site search document that Ian's referred to, which will be made available as part of the planning application.
Thank you, Pass. That's really helpful. David, a question for you on transport again. It's about rat running. Russell says rat running is already a serious issue in the roads to and from the main roads. This will get worse as the town grinds to a halt and parents attempt to find shortcuts. What are the proposals to prevent speeding up and down roads that are inappropriately used currently and will get worse?
Rat running and speeding. Cockshott Hill is currently a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and this question has been posed before about reducing it to a 20, and that put to the Highway Authority as a potential option. And the only issue is with that is, given that it's part of the principal route network, it can't be reduced from a 30 to a 20 because it's just inappropriate for the nature of the site. But there are potential solutions from school entry zone signs that you typically get as you're entering a school environment to our new site egress will naturally help to slow traffic down, because there'll be another point of conflict where traffic slows down, speeds up. There's still the option to introduce another crossing point further to the south where our egress comes out. Although we're just waiting for topographical survey data to be able to properly design the egress. As for other routes across the network, parents are already conducting drop-off and collection, many by vehicle, and have the opportunity to speed. And obviously, that's not something that anyone wants to encourage. If there are specific roads that people are aware of where speeding is an issue, and there's historic evidence of road safety issues through speeding, then certainly we'll listen and see whether there's the opportunity to address that.
Thanks, David. And just keeping you on again on the transport related question, is there room on site to create a new access road through the site rather than using Cockshott Hill?
Simple answer is no. There's just not the available width between existing properties, assuming we mean to the east of the site from Hornbeam Lane, Hornbeam Road. That has been looked at already, but there's insufficient width from a emergency access and servicing point of view, and based on the available land boundaries and the public right of way that currently goes up to Smoke Lane. But ultimately, even though there won't be a vehicular access to the rear of the site, there will still be a substantial proportion of the overall traffic, vehicle traffic that will be generated that could choose to park to the rear of the site rather than alongside, on roads to the west of Cockshott Hill.
Thanks, David. And Ian, we've had a question from Anne. She asks, who will determine the planning application? Will it be Surrey County Council or Reigate and Banstead Borough Council? And it's obviously a very simple answer, but can you also explain why that's the case?
Yep. So it will be Surrey County Council Regulation 3 planners. The application will be submitted by both ISG and Surrey County Council, and the County Council has within, can determine its own applications in terms of schools, libraries, as well as doing the waste and mineral development as well for Surrey as a whole. So it would be Surrey County Council Regulation 3 planners who determine the application.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, I'm just working through the various questions we haven't answered so far, just to check that there aren't any that we've missed or any particular themes that we haven't put forward. Question from Russell. Russell, really, thank you very much. I'll read it out, but I'll answer it myself. For our questions and views to be taken into formal consideration as part of this consultation, do we need to reply online by Monday, or are the questions we have posted taken into account? The questions you've posted are absolutely taken into account. So this whole session's recorded, and also I have the ability, and I will be doing this, to download all of the questions from yesterday and from today. And again, that will all be shared with the team, because it's all really helpful feedback. It's quite clear that there's some very key themes emerging, but nonetheless, there's some really good points that we need to be considering. The only reason we say Monday is just that at some point we need to be able to give a clear set of results and data to the design team to move forward. We don't stop listening. will continue to take the feedback and continue to share it. But if you're able to get it to us before Monday, it's just really, really, really helpful. Okay. Pass, a question here from Ruth, and it might also want to bring in Ollie. We may need to also come back to it because, again, it's one possibly for education colleagues. How have the projected reduction in pupil numbers across the borough been allowed for in this proposal?
I'm happy to feed that one back to education colleagues. As far as I'm aware, the information we have is to accommodate the current numbers that are on PAN. But Ollie, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think Surrey are aware of those areas, but again, the direction comes from the DfE on 600 pupils, because although there may be a short-term reduction or surplus of places, that is not necessarily the picture going forward. There's always significant ambiguities around that. And bearing in mind, we have just been in a period of time where there was not enough places, and that's why Reigate Priory had to accommodate additional classes. So trying to find happy mediums and providing capacity is important in that.
Thank you both. David, a question for you here from Charlotte. Will there be additional lighting on all the pedestrian routes through Reigate to the school when it's dark?
Lighting across Reigate hasn't been considered. Only exception being one route that, based on our catchment analysis, one route that does look like it would be attractive to use, subject to lighting review, would be the Smoke Lane to the north, from Smoke Lane to the north of the school to Cocktrot Hill, which is lit, but we just need to assess the through an upcoming site visit the spacing between the lights and the acceptability and propensity for after school clubs, when it starts to get darker quicker in winter months. But otherwise, lighting across Reigate is not something that's within our remit to review.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Question here, I think, Oliver, for you in the first instance, but possibly Pask as well, from Melissa. What other solutions have been considered to the existing challenges at the present school?
So just to say, as I've mentioned, to reiterate what I've said before, that as a school leadership team, we are managing a school that is effectively an old house, trying to do that within a setting of high expectation, quite rightly so, around children's education and safeguarding and pastoral development. And as I said at the beginning of this, that although that it was possible to do that, it has got come to the point where we need to have serious conversations about the direction of travel and the viability. Now, in order to get to this part, and as I touched on before, this is a journey that the school has been living with for a very long time, including my predecessor. And a significant amount of work has been done under the bonnet to assess the viability of the current school, the impact of staying there, the cost of it, because we have to face facts, people. There's not a bottomless pit of finance. So finance isn't directing it. Trying to renovate a building in the condition and of the age and of the significant historical importance that we currently inhabit is a significant feat, not just in trying to make it happen and the disruption that would cause over a long period of time, but also the financial outlay of it is a very tricky thing to do. Bearing in mind there are things around our school which are particularly unique, shall I say, in that that we have a right of way approved to go through it, which isn't particularly helpful. So an extensive amount of time over years and years and years has been with various different agencies and people looking at it have been involved, including the DfE, which very sadly brings us to the conclusion of where we are. Therefore, obviously, having this level of conversation about alternative sites is one that has to be happening in order for the evolution of the school to move forward. As I said, it has in similar ways for other schools, although the movement of Homesdale wasn't across the school. It wasn't in the way this is being happened. One of the reasons we moved out of that is because they were in a building that was old and not fit for purpose in that respect for education speaking anymore. Obviously, the location of site is the most trickiest thing here, but Reigate is not filled with those sites availability. So it is a very tricky one. But I would like to reassure stakeholders that are on this that trying to maintain a viable education environment for children under the expectations that the DfE and the parents and carers would expect for them going forward and Ofsted is going to be very difficult and challenging. That's not to say, I should caveat that currently that there is an issue at the moment because we have established in this building, we do have these things in place, that we continue to strive to provide that education in the way that we historically done. Because I said to the group yesterday that any school movement, you don't want to lose sight of what we've got right here, right now, and making sure our school is fit, strong within its own home right now, and ready to do whatever it needs to do in terms of moving is very important. So we are very much focused on here and now, as well as obviously keeping one eye on this project as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Ollie. Thank you. I could see people are starting to drop off now, but we got time for a couple more questions. One here for David again from Elliot. Will there be disabled parking bays available for parents with blue badges to park in?
Yeah. 5% of all the parking is disabled within the site. So there are 3 disabled parking bays that are positioned right in front of the main entrance to the building for blue badge holders.
Fantastic. And time for a couple of more. And this one, we haven't covered this kind of area. Zana, probably one for you, I think. And we had a similar question yesterday about sort of the credentials that we're targeting in terms of the building. Someone asks why we haven't considered passive house certification.
This is probably where Graham can come in as well, but as the design develops, we are using LETI standards, which are quite high and are used in London, and those standards are really high and almost equivalent to passive house as well. So in terms of the what they actually achieve, it's really similar. So those have been used, and those are above what DfE are recommending for their schools. So what is an output specification produced by the DfE?
Yeah, I can support that, Sana, just by saying that essentially the building is built to passive house principles insofar as it's lean, green, and doesn't promote any more energy consumption than is absolutely necessary. So passive house sets a low energy target. What net zero carbon does is offset that. It goes further and offsets that energy consumption with renewables and carbon-free energy sources. So the actual answer to the question is why is it not passive houses? Because that's not the route the Surrey County Council are going down in terms of their estate. They're going down at this moment in time. That's probably something again that will emerge as things go forward. But net zero carbon is itself an early adopter of net zero carbon. So like all the measures that have been taken for environmental sustainability, it's incremental.
Thank you, Graham. And last question for this evening's session, Pask. A few people have asked that they've seen information about the catchment area changing or only being what it currently is until 2024. Can you just shed some light on that?
All I can do at this point, not having a copy of the letter in front of me, is just refer those people to the letter that was issued just before half term. And if it's not clear in that, then I'd welcome those comments coming back, and we can put it as an FAQ question and get that clarified with education.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. On that note, I can see more people again are starting to drop away. I suggest we end tonight's session, and again I'll end it on this slide, so you've got all of the feedback options in front of you, and you've also got the timeline in terms of next steps. As I said, please do keep an eye out on the website. We will be posting the recordings of both of these sessions, tonight and yesterday's. Please do keep in touch with the project as it moves forward, and we'll be back to consult you again in late April. The last thing to say is just a thank you for attending. There's been some really good issues raised and lots of things for the team to get stuck into over the next weeks and months ahead. And it's been fantastic to have nearly 100 people on tonight's call, and around about 60 yesterday. So that's a really fantastic turnout, and just demonstrates the level of interest in the project going forward. So thank you from myself, and thank you from the team. I hope you have a pleasant rest of your evening. Thank you very much.